Good evening. Right, and welcome to this cat's eyes. Now I've been playing around with a few things. So I've been doing this. There's actually two parts. That's the part that I've completed. This is the part that I'm going to be doing tonight. Okay. So, but what I'm doing is the first part. Right. The image is actually a Pixabay copyright-free image. So if you want, I will be posting the details of that up later on. And the idea of this is one for the eyes, two for fur. So we've got sort of overlapping fur here. This fur's coming forward. We've got light fur on darker fur. So it's a tonal range of colours, but we're limiting the palette. And then also here we've got the eye. And then if you look very carefully, I've used some to get these white sections here to make them look as though they're overlapping into the darker areas, which is fetching the white area forward. What I've used there is an embossing tool. So that's one way you can do it. Another way that you could do it is a way which I prefer, and that is I usually use the luminance, Caran d'Ache luminance as base layers, and then I'll put Polychromos on top. And then I use a slice tool, which is one of the so this is a slice tool, and I can take out very easily some very fine hair, so I can do that afterwards. The reason why I do a Caran d'Ache luminance as the base layer is because I found that by playing around, that if you put a luminance base layer on first, which is a waxy pencil, and then you put the Polychromos on, which are classed as oily sort of pencils, then when you use the slice, it's a lot easier and it's a lot clearer to see the white lines. Okay, but if you use just Polychromos, say, or one brand of pencil, and it's an oily pencil like Polychromos here, then it can be a little bit more difficult. So I opted this time. I thought, well, I haven't done enough with the embossing tool, so I'm going to have a play around with it. And that's what I've got on that side there. Also, what I did was I've got two sets of pencils here. So I've used this side. I've done the Polychromos pencil. So I've got a list of those here. And then what I've done is I've tried to match up as close as I can with my Derwent Lightfast pencils. Now, they're a lot more expensive, but the colours are quite vibrant, and I do like using them. They're a little bit softer than the Polychromos, not quite as hard, but I do enjoy using them. So I thought, well, for this one, I'll give you the choice. You've got the Polychromos, and then tonight I'm going to do the section in the other half. I'm going to do in the Derwent Lightfast. So that's what I'm going to be using tonight. And also on this second part, this eye, on the second side of this eye, so the right-hand side as you're looking at it, it is slightly darker than this left side, what I've done. It's a little bit more in shadow. So we're going to have to take that into account as well. So I will upload this list. I'll write it out for you, or you can see it there. So for the Polychromos on this side, I didn't use any luminance pencils for base layers, which it was quite tempting to, but I just used the Polychromos. So when I used Polychromos, when I first started, I learned how to do base layers, and I used to just use Polychromos. And then obviously I introduced other pencils. So I now have some Caran d'Ache, and then I have the Derwent Lightfast. I also have some Caran d'Ache Pablos, which are quite good and come in handy. There's some colours in there, which aren't in the others. Also now I've also started using, sometimes on base layers, and further on I use the aquarelle, the museum aquarelle, which are watercolour pencils, which are these. And they're absolutely superb. I have tried other watercolour pencils, which I didn't. The first set I got was absolutely awful, and it put me off using them for quite a number of years. But now I've found these and tried these, and these are actually very, very good. So you could even use those as well. But for simplicity, what I've done is I've used the Polychromos how I used to do it originally, which would be a warm grey one, cold grey one in most of the base layers. If it's a really dark area, then you could use a darker grey, but I started off with those because I do like layers with those and then build up with the layers on top. So in the eye, for the eye, I've used quite a limited palette. I've used some sky blue, dark sepia, which I use with Polychromos for outline. I don't like black. I like to use the sepia, and then I'd either dark indigo or could even burnt sienna, you know, whether you want it to look cool or warm. So the colours in the eye I've picked out sort of a quite bright green, a more subdued green, and then another dark green, but a more natural green. So I've used olive green yellowish. We've got the earth green, and then we've got this. It looks quite bright, but we only use it in certain little areas. Plus, when you put these other colours down, so you've had that as your base layer, and then these other colours down, then it does actually dull that colour back a little bit. And that was dark phthalo green. There's a little bit of nugget in the eye as well. We've got burnt sienna, brown ochre and burnt ochre and terracotta and a light yellow ochre. So those colours there are for the fur line. It's a ginger and white cat, obviously. And then also I've got some manganese violet. We don't use a lot of that, but we've got some of it around the edge of the eye here for the skin tones. Some of it is reflected up here into the little bits of the white on the eye. And also we've got some down here in the tear duct section of the eye. And then, you know, the dark sepia is used as well to create some shadows. And then the other thing I was talking to you about was this, an embossing tool. So it's a tool that's got points at each end, but it's got a little knobbly bits on it. You can get them in various sizes. So you've got, they range from sort of that size, and then they get bigger, and you know, so you've got the very small fine ones there, and then you've got the big ones. So for things like this, I've got this one which has got that slightly bigger on that end and very small and fine on that end. So that's the one that I've opted to use. I mean, it depends on the size of the portrait, what you're doing as well. So that's another. So we're going to be using that rather than the slides tool. So now then, so on this side, because I'm doing it with, let me just write this on there. So this is the Derwent Lightfast. Now these are really nice pencils. They've been tested in museum conditions for 70 years. The Lightfastness, for Lightfastness, they are one of the best pencils I've ever used. So, you know, I'm quite happy to use them, and I do use them on a fair amount of commissions that I do. So I just thought I'd introduce them to you tonight. So I've just got a thing in my way that controls my webcam. I'm just getting that out of the way. Okie dokie. So let's move along to this side. So we're going to see how close we can get these colours. So you're going to tell some difference, obviously, but obviously the least difference, the better. So if you look, this is how I've matched the colours up. So I don't think I've done too bad a job there. I did have a problem with a couple of them. So for the warm grey one, I've used a moonstone. And you can see there it is quite like for like. For the cold grey one, I've used the Arctic, which has got a little bit of a bluey tinge to it. It's not quite as dark as that, but that might be working our advantage. Then I've got, to replace the sky blue, I've used the mid ultramarine. For my sepia, dark sepia, which this sounds really strange, I've used chocolate. So in the Derwent range, it's the chocolate one that you want. And then for the greens in the eyes, I've used olive green, or olive earth, sorry, instead of the olive green yellowish. And then I've used green earth to replace earth green, same sort of thing. Now, the dark phthalo green, the nearest I could find was a vivid green. So I've used that. The nougat, now in the Polychromos, if you pick up a Van Dyke brown, it's quite dark. But if you do it in the Lightfast, it's a bit lighter. So it is very much like the nougat. The burnt sienna is a sepia in the Derwent, but it's a sepia red, so it's got a lot of red colours in it. So it does look very much like burnt sienna. For the brown ochre, I've used the brown ochre out of the Derwent box. The burnt ochre, I've used dark honey. And for the terracotta, I've used sandstone. It's a little bit brighter, but I'm hoping with these other colours it might pull it back a bit. For the manganese, I've used heather. It's a little bit lighter again, but we could build up the layers. And then for the light yellow ochre, I've used just normal yellow ochre. So these are the colours in the Derwent, these are the colours in the Polychromos. So you can see there isn't a great deal of difference between many of them. The Derwent ones do look slightly brighter, but we'll see how that goes. Okay, so they're the colours. I'll take a photo of them and upload it as well. The other thing I would be using is a Tombow rubber. I've got that one, but I've also got the small sort of roundish one. So there's a rectangular one and that one. So those two. My embossing tool is the same as the one I've used on that side. I've got a bit of putty rubber, or like I use is blue tack. And I've also got a plain white plastic eraser. The brand that I usually use is the Stedler Marv plastic. So these are the pencils. Let's have a look at the pencils to start with. So the barrels are made out of really good quality wood, as you can see there. And these don't have a number like the Polychromos. So unlike the Polychromos, these just have a name that's written on there. So that one is that's the heather. Okay, as you can see there, that's heather. Let me see, can we just let me see if we can just so let me just see if we can zoom in again. Right, let me just go back there. Okay. Right, so back. Yep, so let's just zoom in slightly if we can. There we go. So yeah, so we've got nice thick barrels. The names, as I say, are written here. So, and also it has, like here, it has LF1, which means Lightfast 1, which is the best you can get. So they're either a 1 or a 2 in the Derwent, because as I say, they are very Lightfast. And then you've got the colour tip on the end there. Okay. Now, the Polychromos, the one thing I do like about the Polychromos is the fact that the colours, the barrel colour matches up very consistently with the actual lead colour, whereas on these here, the Derwent Lightfast, sometimes they don't quite match up. Like that one there, it looks that darker there, and that looks a little bit lighter. That one looks quite a lot darker on the tip there to what it does on the barrel. So yeah, but as I say, these are slightly thicker than the barrels are slightly thicker than the Polychromos. So for that purpose, I do have an electric sharpener which I use, which is fantastic for Polychromos, but it doesn't really take any other size pencil. So I will go back to my trusty Derwent mini sharp point there. So I do use that more often than anything else, and you do get some really nice sharp points there, as you can see. So let's make a start on this side, and let's see if we can do something that looks a little bit different. So I'm going to move that there. I'll put the colours here. If you can see, I'm not sure if you can see them. If I put them just on that side there, so you can try and see them. So I've got my image at the side here. So what I'm going to do is I'm looking at this right eye, and as I say, this eye is quite much a lot more in shadow than this one. So we don't actually have a highlight as such. So I've used the putty rubber, so you might not be able to see much of it. So I don't like to see a lot of the graphite. And also, by the way, what I've done is I've actually put in some embossing lines there. So all you need to do is look at your reference photo or picture. And let's have a look here, see if you can see it. It's a little bit too sharp and bright for that. But you can see we've got some quite definite hairlines here. So what you need to do is observe your picture very closely. So some will be longer than others. I mean, you'll look there, I've got one going right across there, which is the stray white hair. And then some of these down here on the cheek are quite long, and they go from the white into the ginger fur. So what you need to do is look where they're coming from. So they're going to be coming from something like this tear duct. I'm using the smallest end first. Now, what I would suggest is practice this for a while on a spare bit of paper that you've got that's the same paper as what you're using, because if you go in too hard, you can rip the paper. If you don't go in hard enough, you aren't going to see the lines. And also I'm going that way with some of them and then that way with the others. But I'm putting on quite a little bit of pressure, and I'm looking at how long these embossed lines are. So, and all this will do is when you put colour over it, they should still stick out like they have done on that side. And then this is the white of the top of the fur that comes over here, and it comes over the eye a little bit here. So you've got some little white, some coming over there as well, some white bits coming over the eye. And I've got one long one there. So I'm putting just a few on. Okay, I don't want to overwork it, but I want enough on there. So and if you feel it with your finger, you can actually feel it there. You can probably see that on the film. Let me just lift it up slightly so you probably will be able to see. Maybe not, but you might be able to see the indentations there. But you can see that one quite clearly. And if you feel it, and if you sort of go, the sound, I can feel it going over there. Obviously, don't do it that way around, do it that way. So let's have a look at this eye. So my usual starting point is, as I say, this is a lot darker. So that's got a little bit of a tear duct there, you can see, but here it's obviously a lot darker. But what I'm going to do is, as usual, I will start and I sort of very lightly outline the eye. So I usually use, if I'm using the Polychromos, then it's going to be dark sepia, but obviously dark sepia, I'm replacing that. So when I'm using the Derwent Lightfast, it's going to be, I'm just going to put my pencil there so I can see them. It's going to be the chocolate. So I've got a very nice sharp point. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by coming up very lightly, observing the reference photograph quite closely. So let's have a look. Make sure I've got that on the side. So I'm doing this very lightly and holding the pencil quite far back because I want to make sure I get this right straight away. So because this side here of the eye is going to be dark, I'm also coming down into this tear duct. I'm just going to pull the pressure off a little bit there so it's not quite as dark. And then going up here, we've got this little bit of a dark section there. And it goes up. And then obviously we've got the bottom there of the eye coming up. So that sort of meets there. And then this bit here of the eye comes down. It comes round this side here. So that is the iris. So I'm only putting light pressure on, so I want to make sure I get the shape right. And then also we've got this outer line that's coming round here. meeting up there, and then it comes down this way. It gets to about here, around this section, and then this section here broadens out a little bit. So that bit there is a little bit, that's quite narrow, and then this bit, because it's got another section, so it comes sort of around there. That goes up to the iris bit. This is sort of more of the tear duct section, and then that sort of disappears away into there. Okay, like that. And then obviously we've got the pupil, which on this cat is very like a slit, basically. It's not a like a human, it's not a round pupil. Okay, and then this bit of the eye sort of going away there. And you'll see as we start to fill this in, the embossed lines starting to show. Okay, so I'm just going to check. Yes, they're about level. I'm checking that both bottoms of the pupils. I'm looking at my reference photos just so I know they've got them in the right place. And then I'm just going to, I want to do a very light layer to start with. Blocking pupil now. I'm using circular motions here. Okay. So it's a little bit broader down here. Okay, and then also the edge of this is a little bit darker. Let's look at that section in there. Now this is slightly different colour, so that's fine. It's going to go up there a little bit there. Okay, so I'm just going to put another little layer over this pupil for now. Okay, because I'm happy with that. And then another layer of light pressure. So always use light pressure. I'd rather do more layers of light pressure than going too heavy and find I've put too much on. Okay, so I'll do for now. So that's the eye. Look across, make sure everything's sort of parallel with that one. So the next bit is we're going to do this iris. So like I said, this iris hasn't got a highlight like this one's got a big highlight on that side there. So let me just move that across there so you can actually see that eye. So yeah, this one's got a highlight there. This one doesn't seem to have an highlight because it's basically it's in the dark. So you know, it's going to look a lot darker. And as you can tell from there to there, this has got to go a lot darker. And so is the pupil, but it's in place. I want to know whether it's in the right place. That's the most important thing at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to put, while I'm here, I'm just going to put a little bit of, I'm going to go around, just around the very edge of this. Because if you look at it, there is a little bit of a purpley tinge coming around this eye like there. It's a skin colour, but also we have some of that in here. So I'm just doing a very light layer of the sky blue. Okay, and then on top I'm going to put in this heather, which is the equivalent of the mauve. So I'm just going to go gently around there. Okay, so very light layers again as we go, as we start to build this up. Okay, and then I'm going to use the chocolate again, which is equivalent of my other dark sequel I normally use. just make sure that's blended in there quite well. Okay. And then I'm just going to get the white, luminance white, which I use. I use this for blending and for smoothing out sections and burnishing, simply because it's a very opaque white. It's a very nice white. Polychromos are very rarely used, but this luminance one for blending, you can see there it's now starting to blend all that colour in nicely. As I say, that's got to be darkened up a lot more. And then I'm just going to lighten that section around there, just so that section's marked in, just so I know where it's going to go. Then I'm going to use the nuggets, which is the Van Dyke brown here. So I'm just going to very lightly map in this tear duct, which is coming down here. So it comes down to about where the bottom of that one comes. So I'm just going to measure that there. So that's about right. So after that, it comes round. And I'm just going to sort of fill that in a little bit. A dark nodule there. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of, because it's got quite a pinky glaze to it. I'm just going to do a nice soft layer of the header over that as well. So now I can go in. I'm definitely just going to go in a little bit more with this chocolate round here. Okay. Circular motion. Going over into that lilac-y area a little bit, just to say this is quite dark here. I'm going to back over the pupil as well. Around here. Circular motions, sort of a little bit harder pressure, but not that much harder yet, until say I'm happy. Right, so let's have a look at the iris now itself and getting some colour in there. So to start with, I'm going to put I'm actually going to put a base layer in of the moonstone, which is the equivalent of the warm grey one. So I'm actually I'm using circular motions, but saying that I'm using circular motions, but if you look, I'm taking it out as though it was a clock face. So I'm doing circular motions. I'm actually coming out from the pupil. And then at the top there, it goes upward and round and then back down this way here. And it's like going round as though you're going round a clock face. Circular motions, but I'm just sort of trying to add a little bit of texture, because if you look at cat's eyes, they do look quite a lot of texture and depth in them, and that's what I'm trying to help create here. So now I've got that layer on, I've got my base layer on, so you can see it's slightly different colour to the paper, which is good. So now I'm looking at the lightest colours. So what we've got a little bit of yellow ochre in there, and then we've got the green. So we've got green earth, olive earth, and this very vibrant colour. Now there is some brown in there. There's a little bit more brown in there than what was on the other side, and it's where these little blood vessels are. So we're going to use the Van Dyke brown for that. Okay, so these are the pencils I'm going to use mainly for the iris of the eye. So I'm going to use, to start with, I'm going to go round with the green earth, but very lightly. And I want to give that, again, I'm going to go over everything like I did just with the warm grey one. Okay, and I'm just going to do it again like a clock face. Pull it out. Okay, I'm holding the pencil quite far back, just that makes sure I don't put a lot of pressure through the pencil. Now, normally, if I'm doing a commission or I'm working on something, I'd be moving my board around, but obvious reasons for you, so you could see it, I don't want to be doing that. Right, so that's sort of like the lightest colour, but then there is some yellow in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to map that in. So I'm looking at it and it's coming up from this bottom section here, like that. So I'm just sort of glazing this colour. Like that, okay? And then I've got this olive earth. So this is where the darker sections are going to be, or the mid-tones. Okay, and then also around the bottom. So I can go over the dark area, but fetch some of it in. But look very closely at your reference, and it sort of comes in at different. So here, there's quite a lot of this colour here. It's getting a lot darker. So what I'm doing now is mapping out the darker sections that I can see. Okay. Oops. Again, I'm imagining everything coming out from this pupil. Okay. That's it. Then we've got a bit of this darker area here coming out of the pupil and underneath into this. Like that. Okay, so we've mapped out some of the darker areas. So I'm also going to do now is I'm going to put some really dark green on. Okay, so we've got a bit of this sort of bright green, and it's going to be. I'm going to put some brown on there as well. So I'm just looking, and we have got some lines sort of coming out from this centre as well. So I'm looking at those, the darker sort of. Excuse me. There we go. So you can see now we're starting to get the shapes. So I'm looking, you basically need to look for the shapes in the eye. So if you can get those right, then you're halfway there. So like I say, I like to do circular motions because the eye is quite a smooth object. And then we'll darken up as we go. So the other thing is, as in with the other eye, I did put a little touch of blue here, if you look, just to give it a bit of a turquoisey glaze. Now, there isn't as much in this eye, but there is a slight. So what I do is I use the side of the pencil because I'm glazing the colour on. I don't want to put a lot of this colour in, but I just want to give it that bluey tinge. So it's just down this side, down the right-hand side, basically. Okay. And if you look carefully, you can see these embossed areas now starting to stick out. I mean, they will stand out even more. Now, I'm just going to map in some of these. So it's more of a line, and then we're going to soften them off by putting a bit of colour on each end. So just have a look. You don't have to put every single little one in, but if you can get as many of them in as you can see. Oh, and it's not a solid line, so that's a bit of a broken line. And then I can see it coming round here. And then here is where it's getting a lot darker. And then all I'm going to do is put a little bit of smooth it out by putting a little bit of very light pressure on and just go around the shapes just so that you can get that nice smooth area. Right, so let's now start to really build these dark. So I'm going to put a little bit of the Van Dyke brown now around this side, because this side is really, really in shadow. And this section here has got a browny tinge to it. So I'm going to put this Van Dyke brown, and then maybe put a little bit of pressure on where you need to, on there. And then that comes down into this. So underneath these lines, these blood vessel lines, is where we're going to put a lot of the browny colour. But it does get a little bit lighter under here. This is the lightest section. So I'm just going to reinforce some of that by putting a glaze of this yellow, the yellow ochre. Goes up here a little bit. So you're just using the same colours and keep repeating the same process, but very carefully looking for the shapes and to get that smoothness. So you can see there's still quite a big difference between those. So now we've got to build this up to get that sort of matched in. So now we're going to start putting some of this real dark colour in. I'm just going in between these embossed areas as well. I'm putting on a little bit more pressure now, because I know I've got these shapes in the right area. So I'm just going to fetch some of this. And then what happens is, as you go into a lighter area, you lift your pressure off. So you have the pressure on the darker side, and then lift your pressure off as you go into the lighter area. Okay, so here it's still dark, but I'm releasing the pressure, and then I've got some dark coming off the eye. Okay, and I'm going to start putting in some texture now. So some of these lines, but they don't want to be harsh lines. They want to be quite soft, but you want to be able to see them. They want some coming up from the bottom and some coming out from the pupil. And like I say, they're like a clock face, really. They span out from the pupil, and then also from the bottom of the iris, they come up and round to meet that section there. Okay, so I'm just going to keep, it's just going to be a process of repeating some of this and glazing over, because that isn't that yellow, it's just in certain areas. And don't forget the blue tone as well. So the yellowish part is here. Oh, you can start to put some more pressure on now, and you see the colours starting to blend themselves. Okay. So this is where we've got a lot of this olive colour here. Okay. But I'm also going to put a little bit more of the blue just down here. We've got blue glow. Okay. And I'm just gonna, if you think you've gone a bit dark, get your luminance pencil, and you can just sort of add another bit of light back into it there. And then I'm just going to go back with this really dark green into the darker areas. Pull up some of this colour there. And then sharpen up a little bit and section where it's really dark at the top where the shadow is. And blending this away into this section here. And then we've also got, so you will keep making adjustments to the tones because you need to get everything matched up. And as you can see, that eye is starting to look darker than the other eye. So again, let's put a little bit more of this green in. Soften some of these areas out so it looks like everything's radiating out from the pupil. And then we've got this little line of the yellow, so I'm just going to put a little bit more pressure on there, so that's where it's lightest. Okay. So we'll leave it there for now, and then I'll come back in a short while and we can continue with it again. Okay. Hello, so we're back again now. So we've got this eye, so you can see it's a heck of a lot darker than that one, which is fine. I don't know if you can actually see it on the reference photograph. It is a heck of a lot darker that side. So let's have a look now at so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the chocolate, and I'm just looking here. This actually should come up here a little bit more. That's it. So, and then what I'm going to do for the last thing on the eye is I'm just going to give it a blend with, I'm just going to go over with the white pencil first. Give that a blend, and then I'm going to do the yellow. Where's the yellow? Because it has got that yellow. It's just there. I'm taking that into the darker colour, and then I'm just going to give it a little bit more with the, I'm actually going to with a bit Van Dyke brown now in this section here, because this really is the dark section. And then with the olive earth, we've got more of this green here, the olive earth green that comes into here. Okay, and then I'm trying to put some of these lines in as well that we've got here. So that bit comes in there and then it comes back out here. So we've got like a bit of a triangular bit going on there. And another one there. Okay, and then we've got some of these lines there. Okay, so that's that for that eye. So it looks a little bit thingy at the moment, but we've got to put some more fur around here now. So looking at the fur, I'm looking at some warm grey 1 for the base layer. So I'm going to do so we've got these embossing lines there. So I'm now using the moonstone and going in the direction of the fur. I'm actually mapping out, I'm just going to put a base layer in where all of the ginger hairs are. Okay, so that comes over here. So they are quite a few long hairs on here, but it's the base layer, so we're just going to put in, so following the direction, very light layer. So if you hold your pencil far back, don't forget, keep watching in which direction these hairs are going. Okay, and also take your pencil into these lighter areas, because as I say, we need them to cross, and we've got these, you should be able to start seeing some of these embossing lines coming out now as well. So I'm just following the direction of this fur. So here we've got some very light fur over the eye, so I'm just mapping that in. So that goes in that direction there. Okay. And then it starts to go upwards. So when we get to about here, that's when it starts to go more or less vertical there. Okay, but again, just keep watching in which direction the fur goes. So there's a little bit here where it turns slightly. That's going to be a darker patch, so I'm just going to put a little bit more pressure on there. Okay, and that goes up. So do a shading motion. So you can use the side of the pencil. As I said, light pressure. The main thing is going in the direction of the fur. And we'll go down to about here. Okay. And then that sort of goes back up that way. So it's across. And then it sort of turns up that way a little bit there. And then it hits that section of light there. And then that starts to go up there. So some shorter bits of fur there and some long bits, but we're just getting a base layer in first. Okay. Like that. So then the next bit is we're going to use the yellow ochre. So we're going to put a base layer, another layer on top of this, very light. We're going to use the yellow ochre. So this is where, so we've got some white. So I'm looking at the light sections there. We've got quite a chunk of white coming up here and then a chunk of white here. So I'm actually going to make sure. So what you need to do is look at the shapes, and what each shape is a clump. Treat it as a clump of hair. So look at that particular shape and use that direction, and that'll come down there. And then we've got this light patch that comes up here. Okay, so down there. And then a bit of a dark patch there. Okay. And then that just follows. So that goes vertically there, and then it starts to come round onto this side here, into this lighter section here. And then that bit goes up there and round, so it's going round the side of the head. Okay. So I'm just going to map that in. There we go. So I'm looking now from the middle. So what I'm going to do is right where this, you can see you should be able to see your embossing, but look at how, so we've got here where it sort of goes like that, and then we've got quite a high bit of white there, and it goes back down into a bit of the ginger there, and then that comes out. Then we've got this dark patch here. That's a darker shape. And then we've got another dark patch here. So I'm leaving all the sort of white light areas as free as I can. And then I'm going to do that. And I'm just going to put a little extra pressure on where it gets a bit darker. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over with the white, luminance white, just to, then what that'll do is it'll help to blend where the white joins the, and the lighter areas join the ginger. There we go. And then just lightly go over the yellow that we've put in so that it makes it a bit more of a creamy colour. Okay. So hold the pencil quite far back. Very light shading motion, but shade in the direction of the fur. Okay. So what I didn't do is I'm just going to put a little bit of the light yellow ochre on the light sections just here. So that comes down to about there. So this curves up there. Okay, and then I'm just going to put the white there just to make that a lot creamier. So we can see where the light patches of the hair are and then the darker patches. Okay, so now we can start to build up these dark sections here. So for that, we're going to use, let's get the colours. What have I got here? Right. So we've used the greens. Oh, excuse me. So let me just check that we've got this little section around here. Okay. So we've got that in. Just put a little bit of the sky, the ultramarine blue on there, just to make it a little pinkier. Okay. What I'm going to do here is I've just noticed, just in that section there, there's a little bit of a white section there, so that's in there, and there's a little white spot here. Okay. So we've got the base layers down, so now let's build up these tones. So what we're going to do now is we're going to, like I did on this side, I'm going to take the darker areas, map those in, and then sort of, if you look, I've toned them out as we go out. So the next colour, so we've used the, so I'm going to use the brown. I've got the brown ochre and the dark honey and the sandstone to start with. Okay. And then I've got the sepia red, which is equivalent to the burgundy. So these are the colours I'm going to be using for the fur tones. Okay. So, so what we're doing is, I mean, we may use some others as well, but it's the equivalent of the nougat, the burnt sienna, the brown ochre, and the burnt honey and terracotta. Okay. So what other colours we've got? I've used those. That's right. So Van Dyke brown, I may use some of that. So that's the 5 colours I'm going to use. So we've already done the yellow ochre. So we're going to now turn our attentions to this brown ochre, which is slightly darker. So around these edges where we've got the embossing section, if you start and pull the ginger hair into where the white area is, and I'm just going slightly over where I finished the last one. So I'm using very light pressure. I'm going into the embossed line, so you can actually see them now starting to appear. Okay. And then I'm looking very carefully, and I'm actually going to put this colour so that comes down into there, and then that goes over there. This is the lighter area. Okay, so I want to map out this. So this dark area starts about here. I'm looking very closely in which direction this dark area is going. Now the fur it's not short, not like it is here, but try and keep it in perspective. So just keep looking at your reference all the time and take one little shape at a time, and sort of, as you go out, just lift your pencil up off the paper. So well, let's start to mop that one in, and then we've got another dark area just here, which starts to turn slightly that way. So like I said, just watch the fur, because it can change direction. And then just in between that, just to connect them, I'm just going to put a few lighter hairs there. So that's going to go there, like that. Okay, and then we've got this darker section here, and then we've got the other darker section, which is here. Okay, so it's like a triangle coming out. So that goes more or less upwards there, and then this section. When I get to where the lighter area is, if you notice, I'm going backwards and forwards. I'm just shading it at the minute, and then I'm going to put some fur detail in once I'm happy with the direction. There we go. Okay. And then as we come here, it starts to get a bit darker down here. Okay. So I'm just shading the area, the shape in at the moment. Okay, so now then we need to darken these up a little bit more. So the next colour I'm going to use is the dark honey. This is sort of equivalent to the dark honey is like the burnt ochre. Okay, so I'm only going to put this in the. I'm not going to go up as far as I have done with the previous colour, because what we're trying to do now is actually make the transition from this darker colour into this lighter colour. Okay, so I'm just going to sharpen the point on my pencil. It's a little bit blunt. Yeah. Now I've got that sharpened, so I can actually put a few little fill lines radiating out. And also, if you look carefully, there's a few of those that are going to come into this lighter area. So you just pull a few of those in into the lighter area, and it just helps with that transition. You don't put as much pressure, and you don't put as many. You don't put them as close together. For the real dark areas, what you need to do is put your pencil strokes closer together, and then as you're coming out into a lighter area, release the pressure and don't put as many pencil strokes in that section there. Okay, so you can see now we are following this transition of colours, and then we've got this darker bit just here, and that sort of goes around there, and you get a few odd hairs here in this lighter section. Okay, curls up that way. That's a little bit shorter fur here. Okay. And then up at the top here, we've got a bit more. It's starting to go into a darker area as well. I'm just going to blend that in. There we go. Okay. As you can see, we're now starting to shape these up. Now, these look obviously a lot more orangier than the other ones. So we're now going into the darker colours. So we're going to be going in for the Van Dyke Brown. I'll check the sandstone and then the sepia red. Okay. Okay, so this is the Van Dyke Brown, which is equivalent to the Nougat. So I'm just going to put a few. So these, I'm sort of the darker colours I'm tending to put next to the embossed lines and fetch some of it into the white area and sections as well, because then obviously that will help to define some of the embossed lines. So now you can see them even more there. Look, so you can see that that's like the fur coming out from the darker you do it, the more you can see the line. Okay, so we've got some up here. So the darkest section is going to be here in the bottom where the tuft of fur is coming out of. And then you just release the pressure as you're going back up into this lighter section. But put a few hairs in this lighter area. And pull some of them back into this white so that you get the nice blend and transition of fur there. So you can see it just looks like it automatically continues on there. And now I'm going to go even darker. I'm going to put some of these equivalent of burnt sienna, which is the sepia red. So as you can see, it's nothing like the dark sepia of the Polychromos. So I'm looking again where and which way the fur's going. Okay. So this fur is more or less going up like that. It's a little bit lighter, release the pressure as we go up. Like that. And then here, sort of, it goes up at that side, but then on this side, it starts to curl. I'm going to put some in and pull some in and take some out of this sort of eyebrow above the eye there and take the pressure off. Okay. And then down here, we're going to get a lot darker because obviously this is in shadow and we've got these bits of, and then this bit under here is really dark. So I will be putting some of the chocolate there as well. And then as it comes out, it will turn up that way a bit. I'm putting some fur strokes in. So then I'm going to go into the chocolate. I'm just really, very carefully and sparingly, just going to put a few bits of dark next to the light, next to the embossing lines, just so you can see how these lines work. And then here, so because this blends into the top of the eye where the biggest part of the shadow is. Okay, and then here we've got some more. And then just put the odd bit lines there. And here, this is where it gets really dark again. Look at the shape, so it's sort of, it comes around that bit there and then it curls back up there. Okay, and then lighten it off the pressure as you're coming out. Okay, and then we've got some bits of dark hair here. And then also as it sweeps up there. Okay. You can see now that's starting to blend quite nicely, but we still need to get some colour in these lighter areas. So now I'm just going to do a bit of shading, and I'm using the sandstone, which is equivalent to the terracotta. Okay, so I'm just going to shade this a little bit round and put some fur stroke. This is sort of the mid-toned area. Okay. Now you will see a line down here, and that's because that's where I've separated the two. But hopefully you're not going to see that much of a difference in the transition of the colours from the Polychromos to the Lightfast, hopefully, if I've got it right. So this is more of a, so I'm actually filling So this is like the mid-toned area. I'm shading it more than I'm putting first strokes there. Few first strokes up here. So when I do first strokes, you'll see that I sometimes come out of the dark area into the light that way, and then I sometimes go back in that way. Okay. I'm going to go back again and put some of this glaze, basically, of the yellow. So I'm only using the side of the pencil. I'm going in the direction of the fur, trying to sort of blend some of these colours together and get some of this, some of the marking out of the out of the paper. Right, so now I've got the chocolate. Go back in again and just do some of this, some of the tidying up sections here. Okay, more of a golden glow to it. So now I've got the dark honey. Okay. So now I'm going over the mid-toned areas again. I'm just sort of blending out some of the mid-tones into lighter tones. Okay. Quite a bit. It's more yellowy over this side, so these colours are a lot better. Quite a mid-tone that goes in back into the dark tone. Okay. Right. Well, I've gone a little bit dark here, so I'm just going to use my combo rubber just to clear some of that off. Just to add a bit more. That's better. And then I'm going to try and just carefully mark out a few more of these white bits of fur that's come out that you can't quite see. I'm using my luminance pencil there. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to use the red sepia, and I'm doing it very lightly. I'm just going to put a little bit of a shading over here of that in the mid-tone areas and over into the dark, but it's very light using the side of the pencil. So I'm not actually putting any detail in, I'm just actually blending some of these colours together now. There we go, and just giving it that little bit of a red glow. Okay, so now I'm just going to look carefully at this white section, and I'm just going to try and look at the shape. So we've got quite a bit of white there, and then it sort of comes down here, and then we've got a white section there. So that's that. And then this side here, we've got a fair bit of the white. And that's coming out there. So that shape going up there. Okay. So if you look, the colours aren't too much different, I suppose. They do sort of work well together, but you're going to get a slight difference because of the brand. But I was just trying to show how it can work. So what I can notice here is I haven't come quite down far enough on this side with this, with the darker. Just a little bit skew with somehow. I'm just gonna, using the colours that I've got here now, I'm just going to try and tidy this area up slightly. Now we might see it a bit better once I've actually, let me rub this line out. Once we actually put some of these in the broom, once we've actually got some of these central pieces in. Okay. Now we have a ginger cat, a ginger and white cat, and they aren't exactly perfectly symmetrical anyway. So you can get some slight differences on each side. Now then, I'm going to start this up because I want to try and get some very fine white lines here. This is working. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to pull some of these white lines up here. Make it look a little bit more even with this side. And then I'm going to go in with the moonstone, which is equivalent of the warm grey one. And very lightly, if you look, I'm going over this area, and I'm actually going up into the gingerish area as well. But I'm only putting on a base layer, so I'm looking very carefully in which direction the fur's going again. But I'm using the side of the pencil just so that I can get the idea and the shape of which direction the fur is going. And here it comes down from this, sort of goes that direction that way, and then that direction that way. And you see it up. Okay, and then that bit goes around there. Okay, so I'm sort of shading it in the right direction. There we go. And it comes down there. And then this side, I'm going to go sort of here. There's not a lot of the light white here. It's not as much as what's on this side, but okay. And then we're going to do the same here as what we've done with that. It's a continuation coming round. This is a lot darker than this side. So again, we're going to start with the warm grey one. So we carry it on. Again, look at the direction of the fur. Now, just under the eye, it is a little bit, the fur is a bit shorter. And also, your direction changes a bit. So here, you've got this on the top of his cheekbone. So that's going that way, and then the top of the cheekbone starts to go that way. So you're going to have that sort of going horizontal, and then this sort of slightly bends that way. So if you think of the bone structure, so it comes out from under the eye that way, and then it curls over that way. So it's a bit like an S shape, a very elongated S shape. And then that way. That's the white, and then the white comes down here. Okay. So we've got the base layer in there of the warm grey. So now where the so this more or less goes in from about here. So again, just like we did up here, very light layer following. And here, I'm just going to do I'm going to make it a little bit smaller here. Okay, that goes up into a point there. And then I'm going to go over where these indentations are. I've made enough there, I think I have. Okay. Does that look too light to put the light on? Oh yeah, that's better. I'm doing this quite lightly. So we're going to have some different tones in here. Okay, and that comes down to there. Okay. So we've now got the shape sort of where the white comes from. So again, we're going to take all these different sort of browns, orangey colours, ginger colours that we've got, and put some different shadings in. So again, just under here, I'm looking where the dark sections are. So the fur at the start is a little bit. Again, just look, this isn't a perfect line all the way under his eye. But just make sure you get the shape right. And also under that fleshy colour, there is a sort of, there's a sort of darker line coming back round there. So I'm just going to mark that in first of all with the sandstone. But I'm going to pull some out into the lighter area there. Just in certain places. That's going to come down here a little bit more. That. And join into there. And then here we've got a little bit of a darker area there. And then the light area again here. Okay. So I've mapped it in. So now I'm just going to go back round. I'm going to go first with the sepia red. Just make that a little bit darker around this eye. Pulling little strokes. I'm not tapping them. And then that comes back down here. And then that gives you the shape there of that brow. And then I'm going to use the brown ochre. Put some of that colour in there. And again, it's quite yellow here, so I'm going to go back to this yellow ochre and put in. I'm going to sort of smooth all that out together with some of this yellow ochre. There we go. And then I'm going to put some odd bits in, just so that's, I'm looking at the shapes where the white is coming out into the ginger. There we go. So now I need to make that a little bit darker, so I'm going to be using the dark honey. Again, just looking, pulling some in and some out, but making them look more like fur strokes, but quite uneven, but putting them quite spaced together. Okay, and then carry that one over there. And then up here, it sort of lightens up a little bit. And get dark again. Okay. So now I'm going to go in with the sepia red. I'm not going to put too much of this in. I just want to make sure we get this. We got this light bit of fur there, but we've also got. We can notice that we've got a bit of a darker shadow there, and then we've got this coming out, and make sure it all transitions and moves into one quite smooth movement. Okay, and then this sort of curves over that way a little bit, goes into the white, moves more over this area here. Okay, like that. So again, I'm going to go back with the sandstone. So the more colours I'm putting on here, the better it's blending. So this is more, these are more of the mid-tone. Like that. And then I'm going to make sure we get a little bit around this end here, it's a bit more yellowy, so I'm just going to actually shade some of this yellow in at this end, so it looks a bit more yellowy than it does the reddy browns or gingers. Okay, and then that comes up there. I'm looking very carefully at these shapes. And this section here has gone back to dark. So to start with, put some of this in. And then it starts to curve down just slightly here as we get to the edge of the paper. And then I'm going to go in with a bit of the Van Dyke Brown, which is like the biscuit, the nugget, sorry. Just add some brown tones in there as well. There is some of the brown tones are in there. Okay, and then this as it comes out, it's got to have a bit more of a blend into the lighter area. And then this is the dark area again, so I'm just gonna, when that turns that way. And then of course I've got a bit of the darker area here. I'm just going to put some of these mid-tones in here. And then I'm just going to get the sandstone again. This time I'm just going to glazing this over so it's nicely blending colours together. Okay. And then as we get here, I'm actually going to put in, I'm marking some of this yellow again. And to make that stand out on that side, I'm actually going to put in this, over this side it is a lot darker. So looking at these shapes again, so this is a bit darker coming out here into that yellow toned area. That's that, and then that goes a bit yellower there, and then that's a bit darker there. Okay, so getting a bit more yellow there. I'm actually going to put a little bit of white in these lighter areas just so that they sort of differentiate a bit more. There we go. If you've gone too dark in an area, you can just go back over it with so now we're going to put in the sepia colors again, just to darken this up a bit more. Quite a bit. Those. Then I'm just going to put more light into this side here. Now, I'm going to show you in a minute about the blade. And normally, if I've done plenty of layers in and you've got a wax pencil, like I explained before at the beginning, then it would be easy to scrape some of these fur lines out. But as you can see, it isn't quite that easy when you've used an oil-based pencil for the majority of the work. Yeah, some little bits in, but you've got to also be careful that you don't scratch too deep into the paper. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is, because these are a little bit more prominent there, I'm just going to make sure we get some of these white sections in. And I'm actually going to put a base of the white here. Okay. And then I'm going to move to the moonstone. Start here where I left off with the other one, and I'm going to pull some of that into there. Pull it around here. Again, looking at the direction of the fur. Okay. Okay. So now I'm just going to put this detail in. So I'm going to use the chocolate to start with, and I'm looking at this centerpiece here. So carrying on from this one. Now this is where the hair is really short on this cat. And what this is the white fur, but it's got to be made to look, obviously it's got lots of different shades in there, greys and dark bits of fur coming through. So I'm trying to make sure. And again, looking at the direction of the fur. Now there is quite a delicate line there, and that's where the curves. So that curves that way, and then on this side of the nose it curves the other way. And it goes in sort of a line like that. So it's going to come down to about here. Okay. And round like that. And then this is quite a light patch just here. Lighter area here. Then if you look carefully, this is where the cat nose goes a bit. So here we've got some sort of crossover more or less horizontally there, but they cross in between each other. So we've got to mix them up. And then here, as we're coming out from this tear duct, come out from the tear duct, going that way. And then this side, go that way. Like I said, this is a little bit darker than that side, so I'm just making sure that I get that difference in toe. Not a lot, but it's there. And then that goes into there. Again, make sure we get we're in at different levels. Okay, and then looking at it now, it's got some pinky tones coming down towards here. So I'm just going to put a little bit of this violet on there. Just glazing it on. And also, we're reflecting some of this. Now this is going in the direction of the fur. We've got some of this sort of yellow ochre, and that goes up here as well into that yellow. Okay, and then we've got a little bit of it that comes over here. And then I'm just going to go over all of this central piece here with a white luminance, just to make sure everything looks nice and blended. So you can see the direction of the fur and the texture, but you don't see every single, you can't see it as a set of lines. It is a toned area. And I think that's about done, or I'm going to call that about done. I'll take a photograph and upload it, and then I should put it on, the video on, and then you can have a look at how I do my work. Okay,